Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming back for another episode of We're Talking Shift. I'm Loree Bischoff here with my lovely co-host, Lauren Young. And we have some interesting things to talk about today. Lauren, how are you? Your hair looks fabulous, by the way.
Well, thank you. I am actually unwell. I've passed away. I'm in the throes of anxiety and panic over this hair. I misplaced a hair tool and I just could have gone into the fetal position for days.
Wow. I mean, I've heard of bad hair days, but nothing that's ever thrown somebody into the fetal position. So I
Not literally, but literally I could die.
Oh my. I feel like we touched on this for a split second in a prior episode about the power of our words. It just, I think I might have qualified it as, could we be a bit more dramatic? I don't know.
No one's
Uh,
ever accused me of being dramatic, Lori. No one
uh,
ever.
I don't know if I'm buying that. I really, really don't. Especially after what you just said. So,
Certainly the hair nearly killed me today, but a lot of my friends and peers and people my age are a little bit dramatic when we talk about our daily struggles.
you
I've
know,
never been called out on it, truly, until you did the other day.
well, as you know, I am a very big um, proponent of paying attention to the power of your words, and I think it's interesting. People don't realize how much they are setting the tone of their mood with the things that they habitually say,
Mm.
right? So, when we when we talk about something like, oh my God, this is, what else could go wrong? Or this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. I mean, is it really the worst thing that could possibly happen? Or it's always something, something doesn't go the way you want it to or expect it to. And right away it's like, oh, it's always something. And you know what happens when you say that repeatedly? It's
No.
always something
The
every day of your
habitual
life.
bitching.
Yes. Whining, bitching, suffering. Oh my, that sounds so familiar. I don't know where I got that. Oh, yes, it's the subtitle of my book, Common Sense Happiness. You cannot possibly, reach a state of feeling like you're in control of your emotions, so that you can minimize feeling anxious or even depressed if you are constantly declaring that this is the worst thing that could happen. There's always something, and making basically gigantic mountains out of molehills. Do you hear me? Are you hearing
I
me,
do.
Lauren?
I am hearing you. It's so funny because so many people now are talking about like manifesting things and,
Hmm.
I'm going to manifest a certain, you know, dinner. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to manifest that I'm going to this fancy restaurant and there will be no wait. You know what I mean? We're
Hmm.
manifesting these things that are kind of inconsequential, but what are you actually claiming over your life? It could
Yes.
be some crazy big things.
Yeah, it's that's a really good point. There's a there's a lot of manifesting going on. And I think that it's which is great, if you are aware of what you're manifesting. But I think a lot of people don't realize that they are unconsciously manifesting things that they don't want and things that they hope don't happen. And they're just not aware of, of what they're doing.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's great if you have an intention of, oh, I want to manifest this new career or this new relationship or this, whatever the thing is that you want to happen in your life. But meanwhile, day to day, you have a belief system, a mindset, and an attitude that is counter to what you're actually trying to create in your life because you have habituated way of thinking about things and speaking about things. And there we go. That leads us into the topic of anxiousness, anxiety, depression, and so much of that. Not all of it, of course. There are bona fide cases of people that are actually, they are depressed. They have severe anxiety, and that requires some professional help, of course. But we have such an overdiagnosis of anxiety and depression, and people it seems like, have gotten into the habit of making those, what would you say, maybe negative emotions, or kind of, just feeling a little down, or having just mainly the struggles and challenges that most people have just as you're tripping your way through life. And now, instead of just saying, oh, this is just something I don't like, but I have to deal with it, you've
Right.
given it this label of anxiety and depression, and you're making something so much more serious in a way than it really needs to be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that's kind of where we want to talk about things today, is the conversations around mental health have gotten so prevalent in the last several years, and that's been very concerted. That's been an effort, and it's important to people that awareness is out there about actual mental health conditions. And I think, unfortunately, because it is talked about so much, some people are claiming things that either just aren't true to them, or is it too normalized? Are we talking too much about a perception of something that's maybe not always there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, if you compare past generations, for example, mental health was pretty much stigmatized and kind of seen as a weakness.
Mhm.
If you brought it up or were having struggles, so it just was rarely openly discussed. But today, there's definitely more awareness. There's education around it. It's more accepted that this is, a thing for people. And then, the help that's available, therapy, self-care, whatever, that's all become pretty normalized. It's not, you literally hear people referencing, oh, my therapist, or my coach said, blah, blah, blah. And so it's almost like, yes, of course I have a therapist. Of course I have a coach to help me through things. Whereas in the past, that would have been like, if you were in therapy, you would not be sharing that with people. It was kind of like your little secret if you
That
needed.
feels like the dark ages.
Right. So, so we have a much better understanding of those things today. And we have younger people, the younger generations, that are prioritizing, mental health, and figuring out ways to make sure that you are not falling into the traps of anxiety and depression, or how do you work your way out of it, while a lot of the older generations are still kind of pushing through those struggles on their own. Yeah,
I have
people
a
were
theory. Oh, I'm
good.
sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Lori.
no, go ahead. Let's hear it.
I was going to say, I have a theory on younger people and the better attention to mental health care. And have you heard of a lawnmower parent?
No, I've heard of a helicopter parenting,
Yes.
but
Okay.
I have
Think
not
of a
heard of a
helicopter parent.
lawnmower. Okay, what is that?
Okay, I'm going to set the stage. A helicopter parent, of course, is over the scene, and the eye in the sky over the things going on in the child's life.
Yeah,
A
hovering.
lawnmower parent stands in front of the child, clearing the way so that the child has an easy, walkable path through life. And I
Mm.
wonder if, in some cases, children or teens are having a hard day, and mom or dad says, "Oh, this can't be. My child must be struggling with mental health, and I need to get a
Mhm.
diagnosis, and I need to medicate this child." And we're just not letting kids, in some cases, go through the regular struggles of growing up.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100%. So yes, I think that we have parents that are being, helicopters and lawnmowers all at the same time, because your natural, the instinct in a way, or maybe it's more of the conditioning, is to protect and make things easy and comfortable, because that's kind of how society has and culture has really groomed all of us to be as
Mhm.
comfortable as possible and experience as little discomfort as we can, right? So,
Especially if
yeah.
we grew up with parents who didn't speak of mental health and didn't speak of, taking care of your mind, which is so important, Lori. I know that's something you've talked about a lot in previous episodes of this podcast,
Mhm.
is just taking care of what's going on the inside, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I definitely don't want to suggest that nobody actually struggles with mental health. Of course, probably all of us do at some point or another. But am I going to literally pass away without my hot tool today? No, I'm not. Why is this a joking matter?
Right.
Why is this something we used to not talk about at all, and now we're comfortable making these types of outrageous jokes about it? I don't know.
I
And
mean,
yet I do it.
I yeah. So I mean, before there was just a big fear of judgment from everyone. If you had some sort of an issue, you were going to be judged as weak, not being able to get your shit together, whatever. And it's totally different now, and there are more resources. But now it's actually, I think the pendulum has swung too far, and I think that people have become used to saying things like, I think there's way too much that is falling under the umbrella of mental health that
Mhm.
is simply a bad mood. It's simply, okay, I'm cranky. I don't like what's going on and I don't know how to handle it, or I need help sorting this out. That's not necessarily a bad mental health issue that requires a therapist all the time. It just means you need to figure your stuff out. You need to be like, realize that you're no exception to the rule. Everyone has, everyone's going to experience all of the emotions on the spectrum, from the highest, best, most joyful, peaceful, harmonious, happy emotions, all the way down the scale to the least, to the most negative. And you're going to experience a range of those throughout your life, depending on, what's going on, because that's what's called being a human,
Right.
So
And what a beautiful way to walk through life, to have so many experiences that make up your entire story.
well, it is. And so our job is to start to discern between what is something that's so serious that I can't seem to pull out of, that's keeping me really down, like it's a long phase, or it's literally causing, you know, you to feel like you're having a heart attack. I mean, there's certain things, obviously, that at some point you go, I could really use some help. I'm not able to manage this on my own. And then naturally, of course, seek some help. There's plenty of it out there. But I think a lot of this is just people that have, or, young adults, kids, whoever we're talking about, are just not used to having emotions that don't feel okay. And, people don't like to not feel okay, but it's part of life. So when you come up against something that is making you angry, or making you feel sad, or just making you feel a little stressed or pressured, well, then it's your job to figure out how to navigate your way through it, because this too shall pass is one thing. It's just, you have to, I think, develop some discernment on what do you actually really seriously need help with, and what is just you feeling moody and not liking something that's going on in your life, And now you have to just figure out how to deal with it. And that's where you have to start bringing in your capacity for reason and logic, and not just letting your emotions drag you all over the place. So I'm a big proponent on figuring out how to manage your emotions. And if you can't manage your thoughts well, then you are not going to be able to manage your emotions well, because what you're dwelling on is creating your emotions. So if you don't like the way you're feeling, then the first thing you need to do is check into, what am I thinking about? What am I ruminating about? What am I dwelling on? What is the issue going on in my head that's causing me to feel this way? What is generating the emotions? They don't just come from nowhere. They come from what you are thinking about.
Question: is the starting place actually the external things that you are putting too much emphasis on? So, for instance, back when mental illness was less prevalent, did they have a 24-hour news cycle? Did they have such convenience that if I didn't find my hair tool today, I could have had one delivered to my door in an hour. They didn't have things like that. So are we, now that we have such access to so much, is that actually causing deeper issues? Are we ruminating on other things, much greater issues in general than just a misplaced household item?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because with 24-hour news cycles and people's news, people's opinions, all the stuff is coming at you from all directions. So what's happening is people don't realize that their attention has been hijacked, is being hijacked all day. Every time you turn on your TV, your phone, your device, if you're looking at something that is feeding you information from the world at large, your attention has been hijacked. And so it's going to drag you around the globe, and then you're going to decide what that means to you.
Another example of this immediate access to information and how stressful this doesn't even apply to me. This is something I've observed, and I'm like, oh man, I couldn't have survived in this under these circumstances. When I was a kid, I did really well in school. However, on a day-to-day basis, sometimes you just check out. I had senioritis from like 6th grade. So I would have some days when maybe I didn't turn in an assignment, or, I forgot that I had a test coming up and didn't study for something. But my parents got a quarterly report card and my grades were good. So all is well.
Mm-hmm.
Later, as a young adult, I worked in a tutoring center. And these kids, these high school students, would come in and they would be all upset because I had a bad day today and I think I did poorly on this quiz. And my parents got an immediate email as soon as the quiz was graded about this individual grade. And I know I'm going to have to answer for it. And I'm just like, are we not allowed to just be human anymore? I can't imagine. That's hard.
Yeah. Well, school school and tests and information, all under the umbrella of the educational system, let's just say, is a disaster. It's just a disaster anyway. And I think that it's so antiquated that it's no wonder that more and more parents are taking their kids out of school, homeschooling, microschooling, finding all kinds of fabulous alternatives to the antiquated public school system. And it is, I think, causing a lot of anxiety in kids because it's such a bad fit. It's just a bad fit for every individual's development. And so I think that when, kids are trying to fit into this system that is so counter to a person's sort of natural evolution of how they grow and how they learn and how they take in information and how they assimilate that into their lives, it's just not conducive to the best way for most people to do that. So it's no wonder that you know, things like depression and anxiety are on the rise in our young adults because as life has sped forward and we are in this technological age and they have access to all of this, but yet if you're in the public school system, you are still in a system that is from the frickin' industrial age and has not changed hardly at all. Again, we're back to people just want to avoid discomfort. And, you know, we're in a culture, again, that has really done a lot to prioritize emotional comfort at all costs. And again, that discourages just the necessary challenges and setbacks that we need for our personal growth. You have to go through uncomfortable things in order to become more resilient and stronger and wiser and, you know, just more capable as a human being. So, you know, I think that the balance is really, really key. You have to acknowledge your emotions, of course, but overindulging in them, no, I think that is childish.
We don't want to lose sight of the seriousness of mental health, especially for all of the people who have worked to create safe spaces for people who truly do struggle. And I'll speak to some personal experience here, Loree. When I was in high school, I was diagnosed with anxiety and I was put on medication. And this was after what was diagnosed as a panic attack, which is another, little phrase that kids throw around. I'm having a panic attack about this. Like,
Yep.
no, you're not.
No.
Mine was a physical breathing episode. I was having a hard time breathing. This was diagnosed as a panic attack. I was diagnosed with anxiety. I was put on medication, which I took for several years.
Mm.
And I let that become a part of me, such that I don't want to see horror movies because I'm anxious and I might have a hard time with that. Or I didn't want to, enjoy a thrill ride or take certain activities because that might trigger anxiety in me. And once I actually was hesitant to have children because I was very concerned. First, I knew that I did not want to be medicated during pregnancy. And after having a baby, I'm going to go through like postpartum mental health crisis. And I knew that this would happen to me. But what actually happened, Loree, was I got off the medication and I got pregnant and I had a perfectly healthy and happy pregnancy. And then I never got back on medication again. And it turns out I've never had a panic attack again either. And I think the physical not breathing episode was probably, it may or may not have been an anxiety attack. I will never know.
Yeah.
But being medicated and labeled as a person with anxiety really caused me to be quite anxious.
I think it's really irresponsible to to jump to a diagnosis in young people in particular, as you just laid out, and say, oh, you have this, here's the remedy, here's the solution, prescription. That is so out of control that it's bonkers to me. The young kids being diagnosed and put on prescriptions is insane. And if you don't find your way out of that, I don't know. I just think it's kind of, I think it's criminal. I think it's criminal. There are some cases that are required, but there's all kinds of data out there saying how much overdiagnosis and over medicating is going on, with everyone, but now it's filtered down all the way to our youngest children. Oh, your kid can't sit still. I think they have ADD or ADHD, so you probably need to medicate them. But I think so much of it is unnecessary, and it actually contributes to increased anxiety and increased depression among young kids. So, there's a great book that goes into this. And it is a fascinating book, and it is by Abigail Schreier. It's called Bad Therapy: Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. It just came out like a year ago. I read it right away. It is phenomenal. Everyone should read this book, even if you don't have kids in school. But Schreier talks about this very subject. She talks about even what you had alluded to a few minutes ago, the modern parenting methods, which I guess are kind of referred to as gentle parenting, which, again, when you overprotect someone to the degree that you don't allow them to ever, stumble or bump up against anything uncomfortable, what you do is you make the weak weaker. It's completely counterproductive to growing up a strong, capable human that can stand on their own 2 feet and deal with the challenges of life. So you really do yourself a disservice if you don't just, set your shoulders back and pull yourself up and figure your shit out. You just have to get through it. And we don't do our kids any favors when we overprotect them to the degree that they can't also figure out, how to manage themselves and deal with disappointment, or deal with things they don't like, or deal with, the fact that they can't have what they want when they want it. It leads to a lot of emotional instability in kids. They cannot deal with things, and we see that playing out now all over college campuses, right?
What an interesting juxtaposition too in public schools. I only know the schools where my kids have attended, but there have been, and they've gone to more than one, there have been times when each individual student has like a quarterly check-in with the school guidance counselor. And maybe that's great. I don't really know what's going on behind the closed door, but it's so interesting that they provide that at the school, when at the same time, if you bomb a pop quiz and your parents know about it before you even get home that day, are they wrecking the mental health and then trying to bandage it up with visits from the counselor? What's really going on? When in reality, when I was a kid, again, I could bomb a quiz. My parents might not ever know, right? But it was kind of, you went to the school counselor if like your grandparent died or something.
Well, when I was in high school, and this wasn't like quite back to the industrial age, but it was a long time ago. But like my school counselor in high school was the best. And you could go to your counselor, and basically what you went to a counselor for was if you were having some trouble with classes, it just wasn't a good fit, and maybe your counselor could help you sort of sort through what changes can we make to help you get, figure this out. So it was basically that, or if you were somebody that was, a little bit of a juvenile delinquent like I was, and she, my counselor was awesome. She was like, all right, well, what's going on? And what do you think the problem is? And she just recognized that I was just a normal teenager who hated school, and I didn't want to be there. It wasn't a mental health problem. I just didn't want to be in school, like a lot of people don't. And you either do it anyway, or you do what I did, and you skip school a lot. You play hooky a lot. You don't do your homework a lot. It's really, in the big scheme of life, it's not a big deal. You just get through it. And so she was great with that. But now what's happened is schools have, and this is one of the things that Abigail Schreier talks about in her book. So we've got these emotional check-ins going on in the classroom, and this is this is nuts. So, this is where teachers are prompting the students to share their current feelings. So now we've got a practice that's happening in school where they're encouraging this self-focus and this rumination, which obviously could be potentially exacerbating any sense of anxiety and emotional dysregulation. So that's not cool. Plus, how many students, I don't know, when I was in high school, I was not at all interested in sharing anything about my personal life or my personal self in front of a classroom of my stupid peers. You know, teenagers,
Right.
they have only been on the planet for a few years. They're not emotionally mature. They're mean. They're judgmental. I don't want to expose myself to that as a kid. That's ridiculous. And then
Right.
you have teachers acting almost, and this is not to all teachers, of course. There are a lot of phenomenal teachers out there. God bless them. But you have a certain percentage that have taken on this role of being like untrained therapists. So, you know, you've got this SEL in schools, this social emotional learning that has been brought into the curriculum, which I think they're trying to get rid of now. But, you know, it means they're transforming the classrooms into these quasi therapy sessions and positioning teachers as these de facto therapists, despite their lack of formal training in mental health. So, I mean, that could certainly cause a lot more harm than good. That's not cool. I mean, this is essentially schools, as bad as they are, but don't make it worse by all of a sudden now you're mental health experts and you're going to set up, you know, therapy sessions in school. But that's what a lot of them are doing. That's what the roles that many counselors have taken on, and they are making recommendations for kids. Oh, your child probably needs to be on, you know, medication or needs this, that, and the other. So schools just need to freaking stay in their lane. They need to.
Meanwhile, yeah, we have a third of the adult population functionally illiterate,
Exactly.
and we don't really know what's going on in these schools lately.
Yeah, the wrong things are going on. So if, you know, as long as there's going to be a public education system, then they should be focusing on their job, which is academic instruction and skill development, and let the parents and the mental health professionals address the mental health needs of the students. So it's kind of like butt out, stay in your lane, and leave those jobs to the people, you know, whose responsibility is to work on those things. So that's all I got to say about that anyway.
Well, give me some advice, Loree. If I am um, going through a hard thing, and again, when I carried the label, when I was called a person with anxiety, a lot of times I don't want to say I used it as a crutch, but it would be the scapegoat for issues that I would have. Like, this is really hard today. It's because of my anxiety. And really, as you said, it was probably not because of the anxiety or the
Mhm.
perceived anxiety that I was being treated for with medication. What are some healthier ways or ways to reframe these issues
Great
if
question.
we don't actually have a diagnosed medical
Right,
health situation that's in
right.
treatment?
Right. So again, we'll qualify. This is not for people that do have a serious condition. Clearly, you need to, you know, follow the guidance of your mental health professional. But for everyone else, if you seriously want to be a healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, capable, strong person who is able to deal with the challenges of life, then you need to stop taking ownership over these conditions and learn how to manage yourself, manage your emotions, and maybe temper some of those emotions with some good logic and reasoning, because you know we have the ability to do that too.
Absolutely. I think it's also human nature. Is it confirmation bias where, if you are a person with anxiety, and then something is thrown your way and it's very difficult and you say, oh, my anxiety, this,
Right.
this is further proof that I have anxiety. When in
Sure.
reality, there were a lot of times I probably should have just put on the big girl panties and taken care of business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true because whatever it is we believe to be true, we will find evidence to support it. Good, bad, up, down, doesn't matter. Whatever it is you think is true for you, your they call that your reticular activating system, your RAS, will literally be sort of like energetically scanning, and you will find exactly what you need in order to support your belief around that. It'll support it. So again, we're back to it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
So there's that. Here, here's something that's often overlooked that people don't make the connection to. So to help yourself, if you feel like, okay, I'm moody, my emotions, all the stuff we've been talking about, what can I do about it if I really don't think I have, an issue that I need medication for? Well, mood is directly related to the hormone serotonin. You've probably heard of that, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of times, what people don't realize is that 90% of the hormone serotonin is located in your gut. So when you don't have a good diet, when you are eating a diet filled with sugar and processed carbs and seed oils and just bad food, processed food and all of those things create an imbalance in your gut microbiome. And that naturally is going to suppress your serotonin levels because, again, 90% of your serotonin is in your gut. So the thing is, serotonin is such an important thing because it's a mood regulator. It influences your capacity for learning, your memory, your happiness levels. It just is regulating your mood. So if you've only got access to a small part of that, it's it's not surprising at all that you would have trouble regulating your emotions. And so when we have now generations that are being brought up on horrible processed food, which is pretty common, most people are eating the standard American diet and it's atrocious, especially, our young people. So the thing is, if you have low levels of serotonin, that is absolutely associated with depression and anxiety. So, one of the things that you can do to start helping yourself is increase your serotonin levels. And you can do that by eating more tryptophan containing foods. And that's an essential amino acid, basically, which you get from protein. So you can eat more tryptophan containing foods like salmon and eggs and turkey and cheese and nuts and seeds. And, you can Google what foods have a lot of tryptophan. Eat that. So that can help bring up your serotonin levels. So can sunlight. So rather than, rather than slathering yourself full of sunscreen from head to toe and trying to avoid the sun, get out and get some sun, even if it's 20 minutes, especially early in the morning before the harsher rays are out. Go get some sun. That does a huge thing to boost a person's mood. You can take certain supplements, of course. And then there's the obvious exercise. That lowers your stress level and allows for more serotonin to be produced. So you have to really focus on getting your diet cleaned up so that your gut microbiome is more balanced. And that's going
So
to help bring up your serotonin levels.
you're telling me the comfort foods to which we turn when we're having a bad day are actually sabotaging us.
Well, depending on what your comfort food is,
Junk food, drive through,
yeah,
sugar,
yes, all
more
of
caffeine.
yeah, all of the junk foods are definitely going to be sabotaging you and totally screwing up your gut, and therefore you're going to sabotage your ability for your body to produce and give you access to that really powerful mood regulator, serotonin. So
I had truly not made that connection.
Well,
Something else that I learned, Lori, and I think I learned this after my time on the anxiety meds, but I try to look at things now. I don't know who taught me this technique, but when you're having a problem, if you can get a minute to think about it, ask yourself, is this a 5-minute problem, a 5-day problem, or a 5-month problem? And if you can answer that question and then handle the problem appropriately, you're probably mentally not as anxious as you think. You're having anxious feelings about your problem,
hmm
but I think if I had that tool in my pocket previously, maybe I wouldn't have said, "Oh, I can't do this and this because I have anxiety." You know?
Yeah, that's a great exercise. I love that.
And if you can't answer that question and respond appropriately, maybe it's time to see someone and get some extra help.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really really great way to consider, how you're going to move forward. And that brings up another really good point too, is that oftentimes, maybe not 100%, but most of the time, anxiety is some sort of fear of the future.
Mhm.
So it's a fear of what you think may happen in 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 weeks or 5 months. It's a fear of what you believe may happen that you don't have control over, that you don't want to happen. So a person, if you have this fear, if you're because you're anxious about something and it's not even happening yet, so you are literally creating this whole reaction in your body about something that doesn't even exist yet, right? And the thing is, your mind doesn't know. If you are sitting there focusing on something so hard that it's creating a physical response in you, that's because your mind doesn't know the difference between what is happening now and what's happening in the imagined future. So it's going to react as though it's happening now. So if you are sitting there dwelling and you have a habit of ruminating on something that you are afraid is going to happen, let's say in 5 days, and it's really scary to you and you don't want it to happen and you just think it's going to be the worst thing ever, you're going to experience it in the moment as though it's happening right now. And you
Mhm.
are going to create your anxiety attack or your panic attack. So, being able to calm yourself down and do that exercise, I think that's great. Breathing techniques to calm yourself down are phenomenal. And then asking yourself some very logical questions. Is this happening now? No. Is there something I can do about it? If there is, and then kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of map that out. If there's something you can do about it, then you can take action. Taking action is one of the best remedies for feeling a little depressed. Moving, taking action,
Mhm.
doing something is really helpful. Focusing on someone else is also a great remedy because typically, when you're in a state of anxiety or depression, you're focusing on all about you.
That's
So
right.
if you shift your
And we
focus,
don't mean gossip.
no, I don't mean that. But if you can like be somehow of service to someone else, that's like a sort of like a spiritual vitamin shot, and it really helps you.
Absolutely.
So those are some good things to consider.
I like those a lot. Those are good ones, Lori. Um, Tell me, how do you know if this is becoming a problem? I think mental health issues, we've kind of determined those can be based on circumstance or they can be based on like a chemical imbalance in your brain. Like that's proven at this point. So,
Mhm.
how do you differentiate if it's something you can handle on your own or when it's time to seek help?
Well, that's probably better question to ask a mental health professional, which I am not. But I think, for me, the first logical thing would be, is it, how persistent is it? has it become a persistent part of your daily life? That would obviously be a red flag to me. Or is it just, is it a temporary thing? And then if it's temporary and you're able to, get through things on your own and manage things well, that's one scenario. But I think that when things are persistent, you're not able to successfully navigate your way through it on your own, and if it's affecting other areas of your life, your ability to do the things you need to do, whether it's being a parent and functioning as a healthy parent, or your job, if you're finding yourself, curled up in the fetal position in bed a lot, that's not good. So I think, I think a lot of that is just common sense, but those are some obvious red flags. If you find yourself doing things to try to escape the feeling, like, okay, you've started to self-medicate in the form
Right.
of, which could be in the form of anything, drugs, alcohol, overeating, gambling, trying to escape this feeling that you're so uncomfortable with. Those are also red flags.
Well, let me ask you this. If you are a parent or a friend or a trusted adult for someone who tends to be a little on the dramatic side and says, "Oh, I wasn't prepared for the pop quiz. I'm going to die," or "This is going to kill me." How can we, or do we need to be addressing these things with the dramatic people in our lives?
Well, I think that, you could really, humor goes a long way. And I think if you know that you're saying something like that, or the person in your life is saying something like that, if it's just their way of sort of managing themselves in a fun and lighthearted way. It's one thing if that person is like serious, like this is going to kill me, like, and they're very serious about it. And that's a pattern. That's probably a really bad habit. But if it's a little more lighthearted and I think you can laugh about it, humor goes a long, long way in these types of conditions. So for anyone that feels like, oh, maybe you're a little anxious or you're feeling a little down, I mean, just a lot of times people that are seriously like into that stuff, they don't have a lot of humor in their lives. And humor is like, it's like the best medicine ever. So I think not taking yourself so seriously is really important. I think a lot of people take themselves and just situations that they don't need to take that seriously. Just lighten up. Just lighten up. It's really not that horrible that you can't pretty much manage your stuff. There are always situations and people that you can think about that have dealt with and are dealing with things far more horrible or challenging than what typically people are dealing with and getting really twisted up about. Just,
Absolutely.
just don't get so twisty about everything. It's such a waste.
Unless you're kidding. But if you
Um,
are,
right.
if you are walking through some hard things and you do need some extra help, SAMHSA.gov has plenty of resources available. That's in case you or someone in your life is struggling with mental health. 988 is a crisis hotline, and you can chat at 988lifeline.org.
Beautiful. I'm glad you shared that. That'll be in the show notes too, I'm sure. So if somebody needs some help, you'll be able to click on the link. That is good stuff today. That was really fun. And I think, just as a final reminder, unless this is a bona fide clinical diagnosis for you, just don't own this stuff. Don't take ownership over it and keep it like it's your best friend. Don't say my panic attacks and my depression and my anxiety, because you declare it, you own it. So unless you want that for life, stop saying that, please. It's just not doing you any favors at all. So if you want some help with anything from a coach, head over to LoreeBischoff.com and you can find out what coaching with me is all about. And if you have teenagers that you feel could use a little bit of help with this, that is what the Teen Life Coaching course is all about. So check that out for your high school age teens, and it is really going to help them out with taking agency, having agency over their lives, managing their mindset, getting emotionally fit. So it's tlccourse.com. Check it out.
We'll have all of those links for you in the show notes. Come join the conversation. Let us know what has you feeling ultra dramatic or going to pass away or otherwise just dealing with the throes and challenges of life. We have a Facebook group. It's the We're Talking Ship group on Facebook. Don't forget to catch us next week wherever you listen to podcasts and on